So good morning again. Welcome to our town hall for the San Francisco Transportation Plan. And we really appreciate your giving us your time for this presentation. Again, my name is Swanee Cho. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director for Planning at the San Francisco County Transportation Authority. In addition to our interpreters, we have our extended SFTP team here with us, and we also have Keith Tanner and Nathan Stallnaker from SFMTA who can address questions that may come up specific to SFMTA. But before I start, Rachel Hyatt, our Deputy Director for Planning, will provide some context with regard to the current issues around the transit fiscal cliff. Rachel?
Yes, thank you, Swanee. This is Rachel Hyatt with SFCTA. I did want to add some context before Swanee starts her presentation because this SFTP is a long range, 30-year time frame of a plan. And right now, we have a very immediate situation for our transit operators, which is that the relief funds that have supported our transit operators in the Bay Area, Muni, BART, Caltrain, and others since the pandemic are exhausted, essentially. And so the loss of these funds creates a fiscal cliff, we call it, for these operators. And so without new funding measures, they will face very devastating decisions about service and overall operations. Now, we've been working on this. Many leaders and groups have been working on this, a solution to this for the last several years. And the solution does include these transit revenue measures that are expected to be on the ballot this November, and other approaches. They follow the direction of the Muni Funding Working Group. And following that direction, the MTA is pursuing a three-pronged strategy to close their budget gap, and that involves both the revenue measures on the ballot as well as internal efficiency measures and other enterprise revenues and other strategies. So with any ballot measure, there's of course the risk that voters reject the measures, and so if that occurs, there would be significant effects on level of service. I wanted to acknowledge this up front because what we're talking about today is a long range plan that does assume that we find a solution to this immediate fiscal cliff, and recognizing that that is a separate effort that's underway in parallel. So with that, hand it back to Swanee. Thanks, Swanee.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, so let me start our presentation on SFTP. This is our agenda for today. We'll start by explaining what the SFTP is and share findings from our first round of outreach. Then we'll show you how we're planning for our future transportation investments and ask for your feedback. The SFTP is San Francisco's long-term transportation investment and improvement roadmap for the next 30 years. It has three components. The first is the investment plan, which establishes priorities that guide our investments. It's financially constrained, meaning we have to plan within our budget. The vision plan helps define what we would do with additional funds when they arise. Third piece is the report includes discussions of strategic initiatives and policy ideas that help advance our goals. This effort is coordinated with the Regional Plan Bay Area, which was recently completed. And our SFTP 2050 was adopted in 2022. As a reminder, I wanted to show you these are our shared goals for our transportation program. They were set in the last major update and came out of a years-long process working with the public, the SFMTA, and the planning department. So now, a minute on this slide, we're working on a focused update of SFTP 2050, which is the plus. This update is driven by three things. First, we wanted to coordinate with a recent update of Plan Bay Area. Second, our revenue projection for the next 30 years is lower, which means we have to adjust our investment plan. Based on regional estimates, we see that long-term federal, state, and regional funding projections are about the same as we expected a few years ago. These are the three darker bands, if you can see my mouse, the three darker bands at the bottom. We do expect significant revenue reductions in local sources driven by changes in remote work and other travel behavior. These are funds that we control and are therefore more flexible. This is shown in the lightest blue band, these. And then also based on regional estimates, we expect new and anticipated sources to increase. This is shown in the yellow hatch. With all these sources together, the total revenue projection is about 12% lower than we expected in the last SFTP. And here, again, as Rachel sort of provided more context, need to acknowledge the immediate issue of the transit fiscal cliff. And we know that the pandemic relief funds that have shored up transit agencies will run out in June of this year. And that loss of those funds exacerbates Muni's structural deficit and creates a fiscal cliff for Muni, BART, and Caltrain. And so there are two revenue measures that are expected to be on the ballot in November to help fund transit operations. And for the long-term SFTP, we assume passage of these revenue measures. And so while we know that the revenue picture continues to fluctuate, the SFTP plus adapts to our new reality. The third driver for this focused update is the change in travel patterns post-pandemic and updated projections for the future, which we presented in our outreach last summer. This slide shows the key finding. The 41% drop in trips made to, from, and within San Francisco between 2019 and 2023. Another critical finding is that while people are moving around less, a bigger proportion of their trips are drive trips and fewer are on transit. We also found that people at the lowest income levels are significantly more likely to drive alone. Here too, we know that conditions are in flux. Transit use has been increasing and Muni is getting better favorability ratings, but congestion is also still getting worse. Over the next 30 years, San Francisco's population and jobs will grow, and we need to plan for that growth. We projected that in 2050, if we make no investments in our transportation system, traffic congestion gets worse and transit gets more crowded. These travel patterns aren't sustainable as we grow. So we'll now share what we heard as priorities during our first round of engagement last summer before diving into the investment scenarios and the main prompt for today. Last summer, we presented all the data that we had about travel behaviors, decreased revenues, and 2050 projections. We had virtual town halls like this one and met with community and citywide organizations over the summer. In those conversations, we heard strong support for transit. Many folks emphasized preservation and improved reliability of the existing system, and some people did push for expansion of the system. We also heard about the need for safety improvements, both street safety for vulnerable users and personal safety on transit. We also heard from folks who were concerned that driving in the city was becoming more difficult due to additional congestion, reduced roadway space for cars, and difficulty finding parking. We conducted an online survey in English, Chinese, Filipino, and Spanish. We heard from people across the city over 2 months. This map shows we heard from people from all parts of the city, though more from the central and western parts. In the survey, we asked 3 questions. The first question was whether residents agreed with our approach to prioritize funding for transit operations and maintaining a state of good repair. 63% of the respondents who had answered this question agreed with the proposed approach. The second question had to do with limited revenues. Given reduced revenues, residents ranked Safer Streets for All highest. It was the top choice for 32% of respondents and in the top 3 for 74%. So you can see that's the dark green. The second most popular choice was incentivizing transit, biking, and walking. And the third choice was to invest in new major transit projects. So I'll give you a second to digest that. With the last question, we asked for people's priorities if funding was unlimited. Here, the first choice by far was making transit more frequent, reliable, safe, and clean. Almost half of the respondents ranked this as their highest priority, and 85% had this in their top three. Other high priorities included making streets safer for all and improving street pavement, traffic signals, and signs. This community feedback prioritizing transit improvements amplifies the importance of addressing the underlying fiscal cliff and preserving our transit service. So we use all that feedback to help shape our plans. As a reminder, this is the investment plan we adopted in 2022. It totaled approximately $80 billion. And the investment plan includes both specific projects like the portal and programs like streets maintenance that would be funded over the next 30 years, limited to the funding that we expect. So now for SFTP 2050 plus, this is the investment plan, accounting for the 12% decrease in revenues over 30 years. This plan incorporates public feedback, existing commitments, and technical considerations like the color of money. And it shows that we would have to make significant cuts, up to 70% or more, to certain programs that rely on flexible funds. The investment plan will be comprehensively updated in conjunction with the next Plan Bay Area update. So I can toggle back and forth a little bit to show you where the cuts are being made. You can see that the transit operations, paratransit, and streets and freeways maintenance stay constant, and the other categories are reduced in funding. We also updated the vision plan, which includes the next set of projects and programs that we would fund with new revenues. This is where we're looking for your feedback. Previously, we heard loud and clear that improving and expanding transit service was a priority, so we proposed to increase funding for transit operations. This would be above and beyond the revenues needed to keep our current level of service. There's more funding for transit maintenance, which is critical in helping transit be more reliable. And this is there. The vision plan includes funding in all categories and now totals about $26 billion. Excuse me. So if we can find the additional funds called for in the vision plan, we would have much improved transit service. We could have new express or rapid service so that buses are less crowded. We could have new routes between neighborhoods so you wouldn't have to transfer. Transit priority measures could help buses arrive on schedule. We could also fund projects that make transit more convenient and comfortable, such as enhanced elevators or better wayfinding signage. And all of this helps people get to jobs and school and shopping, improving the city's economic vitality and environmental sustainability. With the vision plan, we could also have more robust transit service in equity priority communities where more people are transit dependent. This could include things like beefed up owl service for folks who need transit late at night. And these improvements work to advance our goal of equity, but also economic vitality and environmental sustainability. The vision plan would also help improve safety on our streets. For example, traffic calming reduces vehicle speeds and cut through traffic on local streets. And we can do better to fund crosswalks, curb cuts, and signals to further our goal of safety. The vision plan would allow us to have smoother streets with fewer potholes. Nicer streets benefit all of us and help advance economic vitality, safety and livability, and accountability. So in summary, this focused update helps us to adjust to our current situation and confirm our priorities for available and new revenues. By doing this work, we're trying to advance our shared goals and set ourselves up for a healthy recovery. So we'd really like your feedback on the vision plan priorities. Your input will help us refine the plan that we just showed. There's an online feedback form that you could use using this QR code or the URL sfcta.org/sftp. And we have another town hall scheduled for next Thursday at 6 p.m. So please spread the word to anyone you think would be interested. It'll be the same information we presented today, and we will have interpreters there as well. The outreach phase will close in mid-May. And after that, we will review and integrate public feedback into our plans. We expect to have a draft plan this summer and to bring it to our board for adoption in the fall. So that concludes my presentation. I haven't been looking at the chat, but I look forward to a discussion. Thank you so much. So, Daniela, do we have questions?
No questions so far in the chat. People can unmute themselves if you would like. You could put questions in your chat, or you can unmute yourself and just speak up.
Oh, hi. Is it okay if I speak? My name's Rich. Is it okay if I speak now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Well, my name's Richard Rothman, and I'm disappointed in this study. You talk about the West Side, but you don't talk about the Richmond District. Isn't the Richmond District part of the West Side? And I'm on the board of directors of the Planning Association of the Richmond District. And as far as I know, nobody ever came to speak to our organization about this. And nobody wants to talk about that since they closed the Upper Great Highway, the north-south traffic between the Richmond and the Sunset. The chain of lakes is a parking lot, or it's very crowded and nobody at MTA wants to talk about this. And we have a solution. And the 18 bus, we want the 18 bus to go to extend all the way to the Daly City BART station. And I don't know why nobody wants to talk about uh, this issue of how to relieve the bus traffic. You know, the largest employer in the Richmond district is the VA hospital, and why can't the city run a shuttle bus from the VA hospital to the Daly City or Colma BART station to relieve the traffic in the city? And this West Side plan doesn't talk about the Richmond district at all. So I can arrange if you guys want to come and talk to our board of directors. I could ask our board, but I'm very disappointed. And I think your executive director actually lives in the Richmond district. So I don't know why we weren't included in this study if we're still part of the west side of the city. Thank
Thank you.
you.
I think we do have a companion project called the West Side Network Study, which we jointly went out for outreach last summer. And apologize if we missed your group. We did try to reach out to all of the community groups, and so we'd be happy to schedule a meeting with both this project, the SFTP, and the West Side Network to you or your
Yeah,
group.
is that the one where where you want to extend the subway out 19th Avenue?
That's a much longer range project that discusses the possibility of a subway under Geary and 19th Avenue. I believe we did just do some outreach on
Yeah, I
that.
did go to those meetings,
Yeah.
but you need something further out, like closer to the ocean,
Yes. Yeah.
and nobody wants to talk about this to relieve the problem out there.
Well, I think Daniela, if you can take a note, let's definitely reach out to Mr. Rothman and schedule a meeting, a presentation, because we do have a West Side Network study, which is specifically looking at the West Side, and including the Richmond, the Sunset, and all the way to South. And I do
Where's
know there are projects coming or proposed recommendations coming out of that study that would address some of this, some of the concerns that you're mentioning, like the north-south travel and, connection to the Daly City part. So I
where
think
would
that
I
would be.
find the study?
We have some information on our website, and I don't know if Rachel has anything more, but we've reached out to groups to set up meetings. And so I think Daniela, if you want to connect with Mr. Rothman directly, we can do that.
I'd be happy to. I'm happy to schedule a meeting and no problem. We'll
You
do
know
that
how to
after.
get a hold of me?
I do, yes.
Okay, I appreciate it. I mean, I just think this, I'm on the the chain of lakes at least 3 or 4 times a week, so it's okay. Well, I'll look forward to talking to you, and I'll talk to my board and see if we'd like to come and talk to us. Thank you.
That would be great. Um, any other?
There's a question about links to the studies being shared in the chat. Which studies specifically? We can add those.
If I might interject, just the gentleman from the Richmond was asking about it. Might be beneficial to have it so he could click on it and
Mhm.
review that, and his group can review that. That was just
Okay.
my quick
Yep.
thought.
Sure.
Well, I guess I should just unmute. This is Bettina.
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. Yeah, just if you could speak a little more to the funding, you talked about that fiscal cliff, and of course, the federal funds are just gone. They've been, at least momentarily, they have been withdrawn. And can you speak more to perhaps where where the CTA hopes that new funds can come to fund these all of these things, because they're also necessary. I mean, the safer streets, of course, but also um, all of the improvements to transit, maintenance and all that. I mean, how do we get people out of cars? Is a big part of it. So where does the funding come from that will, make up for the lost funding?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think one part of the answer is that, the sort of funding and growth is cyclical. And while obviously this current moment is, not great for federal support, just in the last administration, we saw billions of dollars come through, through the Infrastructure Act. And I think there are other, sort of like state initiatives and, potentially other kind of local initiatives that could generate new funds. And I don't know if Martin would be able to add to that.
Sure. Thanks, Wani, and good morning, everybody. My name is Martin Reyes. I'm a principal planner here at the Transportation Authority. I help cover policy and legislation, including issues around the fiscal cliff. I think Swanee covered it pretty well. It is a very tough time for transportation funding right now. At the federal level, we are really fighting to preserve the funds that we have. You might have heard there's talks about reauthorizing the next federal transportation funding bill, essentially. That is in talks right now, and we likely are not going to get additional funds out of that. We're really trying to preserve the level of funding that we have. But we do see other opportunities, especially with the state. There other states throughout the country invest a little bit more heavily in transit than California does. And so something that we're trying to do is work with the state, work with our legislators to get the state to invest more in agencies like BART and Muni, who rely heavily on local revenues. Whereas other agencies like New York MTA, SEPTA, and Pennsylvania, they actually get a lot more of their revenues as a percentage of their budget from the state. So that's another strategy that we're trying to pursue in addition to looking for new revenue measures. And as always, our transit agencies are really trying to be more efficient about the way that they conduct their operations. And there was a report that just came out from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission a couple of weeks ago, laying out some initial strategies that AC Transit, BART, Caltrain, and Muni can pursue to do more with the resources that they have on hand. So I think it's sort of an all hands on deck process right now, but we're looking under all of the couch cushions to see where there are revenue opportunities.
Okay, so definitely looking more to the state to replace some of the loss of federal funding. And at this point, you said the local level, you're looking just to preserve. I mean, it's not even a matter of expanding, it's preserving what might be there. Wow,
I think,
okay.
yeah, in the near term, it's definitely about preserving and expanding service where possible, but there is a deficit that needs to be addressed, and so preservation of existing service is the priority.
Okay, greater efficiency, of course, of the transit agencies. This is a very specific question. It may not fall under the umbrella of this particular plan, but it is kind of related. I think I don't know, maybe you can clarify. This is might be related to perhaps lack of funding for a specific project that I know Daniela is familiar with here in Mission Bay around our school that's going to be opening soon, the new public elementary school. And there's a traffic circle that is definitely pegged for street redesign, roadway redesign. And I mean, we're still waiting for an update on what the revised plan might be, but is the reason that there's been such a long postponement of when we are going to hear about that, is it due to lack of funding? Because I understand it may cost, like a couple of million or more dollars. And is it due specifically to lack of funding, or are there any other reasons? I'm just trying to get at why it's taking so long for us to hear back on that. Can anyone speak to that?
I'm not as familiar with the details of that project, but we can certainly look into it and get back to you. Certainly funding is part of the issue, but I am not familiar enough to know that if there are other issues that are causing it to be.
I can speak. We can also sidebar on this, Bettina, but it's because it's a very complex project, and they're still, I think, refining certain aspects of the priorities or the just different aspects of the concepts, because it is more complex. So that's why things are taking longer than expected.
It's a matter of engineering with regard to limited space for what different folks want out of that redesign, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You just wish you could go back in time and get the people who actually set that up in the first place to have done it right, and I don't know, it's just so infuriating, frankly. But okay, thank you for trying to help get it, improve it for future use. Thank you.
So Daniela dropped the the link to the survey in the chat for the Zoom if anyone is interested in taking a look at that and giving us your feedback that way.
I can share it again here because I know it maybe is up on top or it slipped down, so I'll share that again.
Any other questions, comments, observations?
It's very short. It's 2 questions.
Yeah, maybe this is Bettina again. Sorry to monopolize the time, but there is this biking and rolling plan that was adopted a year ago. I don't know if that's actually under just the MTA only, because I know that's the board that approved it last year. But I mean, when we see something regarding a development on one of the main bike network routes that really goes against the biking and rolling plan. I mean, this is something that's in the planning department right now, having to do with cutting a new driveway that would cut across a sidewalk and a bike lane. And it would be in order to allow a lot of delivery vans to exit directly onto a main route that is also heavily used by pedestrians and bicyclists, as well as private vehicles. I mean, when we see something like that, I mean, how exactly, I mean, does the CTA ever get involved and bring any kind of, I don't know, input onto something of that kind in a development, a project proposal?
I'm wondering if Keith or Nathan would be able to address that. It is an
Maybe
MTA.
Rachel, I don't know that if she's still here, the MTA. I mean, it may be more of an MTA thing than anything, because it's biking and rolling.
Well, I welcome, so perhaps MTA, someone from MTA could talk about their process of working with the planning department on specific project approvals and how people can sort of participate in what those design and approval process look like. I think CTA, we would typically not be involved in a discussion like this. I think a place where our role may come in is if there is CTA funding involved in funding the proposal. But typically, this wouldn't be the type of a project that SFCTA would be involved in the decision making. But I'm sure someone from MTA could describe how they work with the planning department on decisions like this one.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. This is Keith Tanner, Senior Transportation Planner from the SFMTA. It's a great question. I think what I can say to this, because I'm not familiar with this specific instance, but could speak more broadly on our process, is that we're in the context right now of talking about the San Francisco Transportation Plan, which is a long-range plan. The biking and rolling plan, although it doesn't have a 2050 time horizon, is a visionary plan with its North Star, as you probably remember. And it laid out sort of our vision for how we want our bike and rolling network to look in some of our priority neighborhoods, some of the areas that require further study and targeted implementation. At the same time, we have a wing of MTA folks who work on development agreements and negotiations with new construction that goes in. Oftentimes that allows us to get bus bulbs and muni stations or stops created when new housing or development goes in. It can allow for new bike lanes or improvements to happen. But there's a lot of trade-offs and negotiations involved in those development agreements. Sometimes whole streets are repaved. And so it is very possible, although I don't want to say for sure because I don't know about this particular instance, it's possible that the arrangement for that driveway cutout to happen for deliveries that was potentially negotiated years ago before the finalization.
No, it wasn't. I know it was not. I'm very familiar with the project.
Okay.
This is recent. This is like post biking and rolling plan recent.
Yeah, well, like I said, it sounds like you have a lot more familiarity with that particular project, and I know we try to work really closely with as MTA or with our planning department partners, as well as whether it's Public Works or PUC. But it sounds like there's potentially a number of different agencies that were involved in this decision, and I don't know how much public input was also involved in this as
Yeah,
well.
pretty limited. Pretty limited. The thing is just now that project's just now starting its EIR. Or maybe a couple of months ago started the EIR in February. So I don't know. The whole thing doesn't seem, I don't know. It doesn't seem kosher, frankly. But there it is. Anyway, thank you.
You. I'm not seeing any other questions or folks coming off mute. Thank you, Keith. And I think maybe we'll close our meeting then for today. Thank you so much for your time and for the good questions. And thank you to our interpreters, Agnes, Jasmine, and Fernando, for helping us this morning. Please do complete the survey and tell your friends and family. And feel free to excuse me, email us with any questions that might pop up. And we'll definitely be following up with Mr. Rothman about a meeting with the folks in the Richmond. Thank you so much. Have a good Saturday.